Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today we're going to mill some aluminum and make a custom license plate. Quick thanks to Gorilla Glue for sponsoring this project. Stay tuned and I'll show you how I use their products to help make this license plate. In Illustrator, I laid out the outer shape of a license plate, and that's 12 by 6. I put rounded corners on it, and then copied that shape, scaled it down about ½ inch in. I added some text to the middle of it, and center aligned it, and then I made 2 slots that will be for the screws to go through to hold it to the car. I saved it out as an SVG file and imported that into Easel. I set the material to 1/8 inch aluminum, and then I selected each one of the shapes and set the particular depth that it needed. Then I duplicated this file and removed the outer border, and this would be just for the letters to be cut out of wood. I moved them down to the corner and set the wood type and the thickness. I'm using 1/8 inch aluminum and a scrap of teak. This is good weather resistant wood. I clamped down the aluminum really tight and started the easel operation. Now this is way sped up because it had to move very slowly to get through the aluminum. So I stopped the cut midway through because I could tell that the bit was getting dull. I'm using the wrong kind of bits because they're only what I had on hand. The new ones that I ordered are not in yet, so I just decided to try it with these single flute bits. You should use something else if you're gonna cut aluminum, but it is working. So I decided to stop it because it was gonna take a really long time and I could tell the machine was starting to have trouble because of the bit. I let it finish the little groove that went around the sides and then drilled the 2 holes for the screws to go through the license plate, and then once it finished those pieces, I stopped the program. That forced the machine to go back to 0, back to the place that it started. And now in Easel, I'm taking everything out except for the letters, and I'm just gonna have it do the letter engraving across the middle and then trace a small outline for the outer edge of the license plate. So I put in a brand new bit and let it cut the letters. The outer border that it added was just for me to have a reference so that I could trim out the final shape on the bandsaw. Now of course this is very sped up because it was a really long cut again, but very happy with how it turned out. The scrap of teak that I had was thicker than I wanted, so I took it to the table saw, trimmed off the rough edge, and then resawed it down to 1/4 inch on the bandsaw. I clamped it down to the wasteboard and then I ran the second easel file, and this was just the letters outlined. Outlining these letters will help them to be the exact same size as the holes that I cut in the aluminum. I also made sure to make the cut depth just barely below 1/4 inch so they weren't quite cut out and I could pop them out by hand. They came out really well but still needed some sanding, so I sanded each one down with flexible sanding paper and a sanding block to make sure I got all the inside corners and all the surfaces as clean as I could. On the bandsaw I used the reference lines that I had made to trim off the excess aluminum. I wanted the corners to be rounded over and I did that on the disc sander. Now most of these edges were still pretty rough, so on the belt sander I just kind of moved them around to round over the edges just a little bit and really just to smooth them out. Then I laid it face down and ran it all over the sander, and this gave it a nice brushed look. So here's one of the little things about doing inlays on a CNC. Imagine this is the end of your bit that you're using. It's a round bit, so when you're going to make a cut, you can cut on the outside of something very precisely, right? You can get all the way around that. But if you want to cut the inside of a corner, you're limited to how far in you can cut because of the roundness of this bit. So you end up with that little area there in the corner that's different when you're trying to cut the inside piece and the outside piece to fit together. Case in point, the inside and the outside of these letters are not always the same. When you cut out here, the tips of the letters are rounded, but when you cut out the letter, it's sharp. So the way around this is to basically just smooth out the letters to make them fit within the hole. To do this, I pressed each letter down into the hole, which left an indentation where the roundover was. On that mark, I trimmed away the excess wood with a sharp knife. I did this until each one fit in well. This was a little tedious because each letter is a combination of inside and outside corners, but after that they all fit nicely. I cleaned out the holes for the screws with a drill bit and sanded them down a little bit so that they were smooth. I evened out the sanding pattern on the front of the plate with a wire brush and a sanding pad. Alright, so I got the finish on the aluminum like I like it. It's nice and brushed, looks pretty cool to me. I got the wood sanded down, these are ready to go in. Now I just have to connect these two things together. And that brings me to the sponsor for this video, Gorilla Glue. If you're not familiar with Gorilla Glue, you should be, because they make glues and adhesives that make anything stick to anything else pretty much. This is their original formula, and this stuff expands 3 times into the material that it's gluing together to make a stronger bond. Now if you don't need this kind of glue, they also have super glue. They have it in the regular and the gel formula, this stuff sets up really quickly, and this is great for really small fixes around the house. They also have Gorilla Tape. Now this stuff is the stickiest tape I've ever used in my life, and it will stick to just about any surface. It doesn't matter if it's smooth or rough or whatever. The best thing about the tape is that it's actually water resistant, so if you were to tape up something outside, it will stay taped together. It's not gonna fall away like a lot of other tapes will. So be sure to check out Gorilla Glue. They've got awesome products that will help you in all sorts of DIY projects and help you fix things around the house. You can find it just about everywhere. But for my license plate, I'm not gonna use the original Gorilla Glue, mainly because I don't want it to expand up around the letters. So instead, I'm gonna use the construction adhesive. Now this stuff is 100% waterproof, which is great because the license plate will be outside, and it's made to attach any surface to any surface. It grabs in about 30 seconds, so let's give this a shot, see how it works. I squirted out a little pile of the adhesive onto a scrap of wood and applied it just with a small stick. I tried not to use very much of this to avoid squeeze out around the letters. The squeeze out did still happen, which actually turned out to be okay. I tried to clean it up while it was wet, but then I realized that it would make more sense to let it set up and then trim it away with a knife. And that actually did work a lot better. I wanted this to fully cure overnight, so I used a really advanced clamping technique to hold it in place. And the next morning, it was all ready to go. When the adhesive cures, it turns into a kind of a rubbery substance, so it's very easy to cut away with a sharp knife, and you couldn't even tell it was there when I was finished. I coated all the wood with a thin coat of tung oil, which I'll probably do on a regular basis, then it was ready to put on the truck. So I'm really excited about how this came out, and to be honest, I'm a little surprised. I was really excited to finally cut some metal on the X-Carve, and I wasn't really sure how it would perform. Even though I've heard that it can do aluminum, you know, I'd just never done it before. I was kind of expecting to have it fail first, and then for me to figure some stuff out, and then have it cut better the second time around. But this was the first go, and it actually worked really well. There are some things that will make it better next time. Mainly, I'm going to be putting this DeWalt spindle on the machine, and that's going to give it a lot more power. It's going to be able to cut through stuff way faster. And the settings in Easel will actually reflect that you have this in place, so that should make a big difference. The other big difference is the bit that I was using. I was totally using the wrong bit. I knew it going into it because I didn't have the correct one on hand, but I thought I'd give it a shot. I have bits that are on the way that are made for cutting aluminum, and so I'm really excited to see the difference between making this and making the next thing with the new spindle and the correct bits. So with those changes to the machine, it should make cutting this a lot faster as well, because cutting this aluminum, what you see here, took about 16 hours. It took a really, really long time because I had to go so slowly. In comparison, these wood pieces took about 15 minutes. Now some people are gonna ask, and where I live, you don't have to have a front plate that matches your back plate, so that's why I can do this. I know not everybody can put one here. People also might ask if I'm willing to make these and sell these, and unfortunately the answer is no, simply because I don't have the time. If this one took 16 hours to cut, I just cannot make more of these to sell. So I learned a lot from doing this inlay type work, and next time hopefully I can think about the inside-outside corner stuff that I talked about and work that into the design rather than having to work around that problem. So that's about it for this one, guys. I hope you liked this one, and if you did, let me know in the comments or at ILikeToMakeStuff.com. I've got a lot of other CNC and woodworking projects that you might be interested in, along with a bunch of other stuff. And of course, if you want to support these videos, Patreon is the best way to do that. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.